The Stellar Dawn was a massive trading station, a floating city bustling with life and activity in the middle of the galaxy. It was a place where beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors came to trade, share stories, and sometimes stir up trouble. But today, something unusual had happened. Word spread quickly through the crowded corridors and markets. A Xaruthan woman had arrived. The name alone was enough to make many beings shudder. The Xaruthans were a mysterious and reclusive race, rumored to have powers that could twist minds and alter reality itself. No one really knew the truth, but the fear of the unknown was enough to keep everyone at a distance. Calixa walked through the station, her movements graceful but deliberate. She was tall, her skin a shimmering silver that seemed to catch the light in strange ways. Her eyes glowed faintly, like twin moons, and her long, dark robes flowed behind her. She carried no weapons, but her mere presence was enough to part the crowd like a blade slicing through water. Merchants whispered nervously as she passed their stalls. Security officers kept a cautious distance but made no move to approach her. Calixa didn't seem to care. She moved calmly, her gaze sweeping over the chaos of the station, as if she were looking for something or someone. In the midst of the commotion, Captain Adrian Ace Miller watched from a nearby table in the station's main plaza. Adrian was a human explorer, known for his fearless curiosity and his tendency to end up in trouble because of it. He had short, dark hair, a rugged face, and an easygoing smile that made people trust him. Right now, though, he wasn't smiling. He watched Calixa with interest. Unlike the others, he wasn't scared. In fact, he was intrigued. There was something about her, a quiet confidence, a sense of purpose, that made him want to know more. He sipped his coffee, ignoring the hushed warnings of the other patrons around him. "Don't even think about it," said a nearby merchant, an insect-like creature with jittery antennae. "That's a Xaruthan. They'll mess with your head, twist your thoughts. Stay away, human." Adrian grinned. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." The merchant shook his head. "I've never met one, and I don't plan to. But I've heard the stories. They're dangerous." "Stories," Adrian said, leaning back in his chair. "Funny how those always seem scarier than the truth." Before the merchant could respond, Adrian stood and began walking toward Calixa. The plaza seemed to hold its breath as he approached her. Beings of every species stopped what they were doing, their eyes widening in disbelief. Calixa noticed him right away. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Adrian felt a strange sensation, like a gentle breeze brushing against his mind. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was unlike anything he'd ever felt before. "Hello," Adrian said, his voice calm and friendly. "You seem new here. I'm Captain Adrian Miller. Most people just call me Ace." Calixa studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, she spoke. Her voice was soft, but carried an otherworldly quality, as if it echoed from far away. "Captain Miller," she said, "you are either very brave or very foolish to approach me." "Maybe a bit of both," Adrian replied with a grin. "But I've always believed fear is just a lack of understanding. So, help me understand. What brings you to the Stellar Dawn?" Calixa tilted her head slightly, as if considering whether to answer. Finally, she said, "I am searching for something. Something important." "What kind of something?" Adrian asked, genuinely curious. Calixa's gaze seemed to pierce through him. "That is not a question I can answer yet, but your willingness to speak to me is unusual. Your kind does not share the fears of others. Humans have a habit of being curious about the unknown," Adrian said with a shrug. "Sometimes it gets us into trouble, but it also leads to discoveries." Calix's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, though it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Then perhaps you will understand more than others. But be warned, Captain Miller, curiosity can also be dangerous." Before Adrian could reply, a loud announcement echoed through the plaza, breaking the moment. Calixa glanced toward the source of the noise, then back at Adrian. "I must go," she said, "but perhaps we will speak again." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Adrian standing in the middle of the plaza, the eyes of the entire station on him. As she disappeared into the crowd, Adrian couldn't help but smile. He didn't know what Calixa was searching for, but he had a feeling this was the beginning of an adventure unlike any he'd ever experienced. Little did he know, he was absolutely right. Adrian stood in the middle of the bustling Stellar Dawn Plaza, watching Calixa disappear into the crowd. The brief encounter left him with 1,000 questions, but the most pressing one was clear. What was she truly searching for? With a deep breath, Adrian headed back to his ship, the starbound Echo. It wasn't much, just a small freighter he'd customized over the years for exploration and transport. His crew, when they weren't off on other assignments, consisted of a few trustworthy beings who knew how to get the job done without asking too many questions. Adrian liked it that way. Inside the ship's small galley, Adrian replayed his encounter with Calixa in his mind. She wasn't like any alien he'd met before. Her presence felt ancient, powerful, yet controlled. Even though she claimed her race was misunderstood, the fear in the station was real, and Adrian couldn't ignore it. Suddenly, the ship's intercom beeped. "Captain," a smooth, calm voice came through. "We have a visitor." Adrian smiled as he recognized the voice. "Mira, you're never just a visitor." Mira's image appeared on the screen, her feline-like features and bright green eyes lighting up the small space. "I couldn't resist," she said, her tail flicking lazily behind her. "There's something about that Saruthan you were talking to. Rumors have been spreading faster than usual." "She's not here to cause trouble," Adrian said, gesturing toward the seat across from him. "At least, not yet. But she's looking for something important. Important enough to draw the attention of the entire station." Mira said, her voice steady but curious. "You're going to help her?" Adrian leaned back, his hands behind his head. "I don't know what I'm getting into, but something tells me I should." Mira's eyes narrowed slightly. "Be careful, Adrian. Saruthans aren't easily trusted, even if she seems different." Before Adrian could reply, the ship's hatch opened with a soft hiss. Without needing to look, Adrian knew who it was. Calixa stepped inside, her presence as commanding as before, but now mixed with something more. "Trust. I thought you might want to talk more," Calixa said softly, her voice carrying through the ship's quiet interior. "There are few who approach me with such ease." Adrian gave her a nod. Curiosity runs deep in humanity. Sometimes it's hard to ignore. Mira stood silently at the side, watching the interaction with a critical gaze. She knew better than to interrupt, especially when the conversation could lead to something much larger than a simple inquiry. Calixa sat down across from Adrian, her gaze steady on his. "Your crew seems protective," she said, her eyes flicking toward Mira. "She's earned it," Adrian said with a smirk. "Everyone here has." Calixa considered his words, then offered a slight nod. "I come from a race that believes in balance. My people have existed for millennia, yet we are misunderstood because of fear. Our powers, while extraordinary, are meant to serve the greater good, not to harm." Adrian leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "But the rumors say otherwise." Calixa's expression darkened slightly. "Rumors are often born of misunderstanding. The truth lies deeper, in the knowledge we keep hidden." Mira crossed her arms, her tail twitching. "Knowledge can be dangerous. Even if your intentions are good, how can we be certain you won't misuse it?" Calixa turned to Mira, her eyes glowing faintly. "Because we have nothing to gain by destruction. Our people have seen the consequences of unchecked power. We wish only to preserve harmony, and yet fear prevents us from doing so." Adrian nodded thoughtfully. "So what exactly are you searching for?" Calixa hesitated for a moment before answering. "An artifact. One that holds the key to stabilizing a cosmic anomaly that threatens to tear through the fabric of reality. My people created it long ago to protect the galaxy from chaos. Now it has fallen into the wrong hands. Adrian's brow furrowed. The Korthus Syndicate. Calixa gave a slight nod. They've learned to exploit the artifact's power for their own gain. Without it, the anomaly will spread and worlds will be lost. Adrian glanced at Mira, who was now fully invested in the conversation. You think we can stop them? Calix's expression softened. With your help, yes. But it won't be easy. The Syndicate has become more ruthless than ever. Adrian sat back, rubbing his chin in thought. We'll need a plan. And if we're going to do this, we should gather some trustworthy allies. Calix's lips curved into a faint smile. Wise words. Mira finally spoke, her voice calm yet firm. If we're going after this artifact, we're in for more than a simple retrieval mission. We're diving headfirst into something the galaxy isn't prepared for. Adrian nodded, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. Let's get started. With that, the starbound Echo began to set its course toward the unknown, a journey that would test them in ways they could never have anticipated. The starbound Echo glided smoothly through the dark reaches of space, its small engines humming softly as Adrian piloted the ship toward their next destination. Calixa sat in the co-pilot's seat, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. She had offered little in the way of small talk, her thoughts clearly focused on the mission ahead. Adrian leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching her. Despite her composed demeanor, there was a tension in the air, a shared weight they both felt as they ventured into the unknown. We're not turning back now, Adrian said softly, breaking the silence. No turning back once we set our sights on the artifact. Calixa didn't respond immediately. After a moment, she said, No. There's no retreat, only forward. Adrian's brow furrowed slightly as he adjusted the controls. You sound certain. I must be, Calixa said simply. Lives depend on it. Their destination was a shadowed world on the edge of the known galaxy, a world once untouched by conflict, but now controlled by the Korthus Syndicate, a criminal empire known for exploiting the vulnerable and conquering the weak. The artifact they sought had been stolen from Soruthan history, hidden away deep within the Syndicate's fortress. We'll need a plan, Adrian said, his voice steady, and a crew we can trust. Calixa turned to him, her eyes softening. You have good instincts, Captain Miller. Trust is rare, especially in situations like these, but we don't have the luxury to be selective. Adrian smiled, a quiet confidence radiating from him. Then we'll make it work. Hours later, the starbound Echo docked on a smuggler's moon orbiting the shadowy world. The moon was a hive of activity, illicit trades, secret deals, and whispers of rebellion. Adrian had chosen this location to gather allies who owed him favors, those willing to stand against the Syndicate. First to arrive was Mira, her feline features sharp and alert. She had been in contact with the various factions and mercenaries who might be willing to assist. Next came a human engineer named Leela, who was a whiz with gadgets and hacking devices, essential for navigating the Syndicate's advanced security systems. Finally, Varn, a grizzled Silurian warrior, arrived, his imposing figure clad in heavy armor, ready for combat. Quite the group, Adrian noted, watching the small crew assemble around the ship's cargo hold. Calixa stood quietly at the edge, her eyes scanning the room with calm precision. She had accepted their aid, though her trust in them was harder to earn. We're going in stealth, Adrian began, laying out the plan. Leela will handle the security systems, Mira will scout ahead, and Varn will cover us in case things get rough. Calixa and I will retrieve the artifact. Mira crossed her arms, her tail flicking in anticipation. Sounds risky. Better than barging in with guns blazing, Adrian said with a grin. This is about precision, not chaos. Leela gave a nod. We'll have the Syndicate's security bypassed in no time. My drones are already deployed, scouting the area. Varn hefted his massive weapon, a weapon designed to tear through armor and shields. I'll be ready to tear through anyone who gets in our way. Calixa stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Your trust in me is not unwarranted. I will ensure the artifact is protected. But be warned, my abilities are delicate. They can manipulate, not destroy." Adrian met her gaze, his expression serious. "We'll handle the rest. Together." The group spent the rest of the night preparing. Lila's drones scouted the fortress, gathering intelligence on its defenses. Mira monitored the Syndicate's communications, feeding information back to the team. Varn sharpened his blades and tuned his armor, ready for battle. As dawn broke over the moon's horizon, the team boarded the starbound Echo once more. They had a plan, a mission, and an understanding that failure wasn't an option. The galaxy hung in the balance, and they couldn't afford to falter. "We're ready," Adrian said, his voice steady with resolve. "Let's move." The starbound Echo soared through the atmosphere, heading straight for the Syndicate's fortress. The journey was perilous, but they pressed forward, driven by a shared purpose: to reclaim the artifact and prevent the galaxy from falling into chaos. The starbound Echo descended through the swirling mists surrounding the Syndicate fortress, its engines humming softly against the backdrop of a quiet yet tense silence. The fortress loomed ahead, its black spires cutting into the sky like jagged teeth. Adrian piloted the ship with precision, maneuvering toward a designated docking point that Leela had pinpointed through her extensive scans. Inside the ship, the crew prepared for what lay ahead. Lila checked her devices one last time, her fingers moving quickly across the touch interface of her portable terminal. Mira stood near the viewport, scanning the surrounding landscape for any signs of movement, while Varn inspected his weapons, making sure every blade and grenade was in place. Calixa remained calm, her focus steady, her glowing eyes reflecting the faint flicker of lights from the fortress below. Adrian, leaning back in his seat, took a deep breath. "This is it," he said quietly, the weight of the mission pressing down on his shoulders. "Stay alert. No mistakes." The starbound Echo touched down on the landing pad, hidden from view by towering walls of metal and stone. The crew moved swiftly, exiting the ship through a secure hatch. The fortress was a fortress in every sense: guard towers, reinforced gates, and a network of security cameras scanning every inch of the grounds. Leela activated her gadgets, the hum of circuits filling the air as her small drones began buzzing around the perimeter. "They won't see us coming," she whispered, watching the screens flicker as her devices overrode the fortress's defenses. "Keep us updated," Adrian said, his voice steady as he led the way through the shadows. Mira moved ahead, her movements silent as a ghost. She signaled back to the group, indicating no immediate threats as they slipped through a maintenance corridor that connected to the inner sanctum of the fortress. Varn stayed close, his hulking presence a reassuring wall of protection. Calixa, though quiet, exuded a calm authority. Her abilities were subtle, a quiet influence woven into the air, a shield that helped deflect attention from their position. Her mind worked in tandem with the group, sensing and adjusting as the danger around them grew. As they moved deeper into the fortress, the tension escalated. The halls grew narrower, and the flickering of distant lights cast long shadows over the corridors. Security forces were more frequent, patrolling the lower levels where sensitive equipment was housed. Mira's drones navigated around these patrols, their tiny forms disappearing into ventilation shafts or ducking behind crates. Leila's voice crackled softly through the comms. "I've unlocked the primary security grid. They'll notice something's wrong soon, but we'll be long gone by then." Adrian nodded, keeping his pace steady. "Good work, Leila. Let's keep moving." Suddenly, a sharp alert rang through the fortress. "Unidentified intruders detected," a robotic voice announced, echoing through the corridors. Red lights began to pulse, alerting every guard in the vicinity. "Now they know we're here," Mira said, glancing back at the others. "Then we move faster," Adrian said. They reached the artifact chamber, a large, heavily guarded room deep within the fortress. The artifact sat atop a pedestal, its crystalline surface glowing softly with an inner light. Calixa moved ahead, her mind carefully assessing the situation. "Stay back," she whispered to the others. "This is delicate." Using her abilities, Calixa gently influenced the minds of the guards stationed around the artifact. Her powers worked subtly, nudging them into a haze of confusion without causing harm. One by one, they relaxed, lowering their weapons. "I've got it," Calixa said, her voice calm. She reached for the artifact, her fingers brushing the cool crystal. A surge of ancient energy passed through her, making her pause for a moment as visions of Haruthan history flashed through her mind. "Done," she said, holding the artifact securely in her hands. "Let's go." Suddenly, the sound of boots echoed in the distance. More guards were on their way. "Run," Adrian shouted, leading the way back through the corridors with the artifact safely stowed in Calix's grasp. Mira coordinated with Leela as the team sprinted toward the exit. Varn took point, using his immense strength and weapons to clear a path. Explosions erupted behind them as he barreled through barricades and defenses. The fortress shook with the impact, but the team pushed forward, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Almost there, Layla's voice rang out, her excitement tempered by the urgency. At last, they reached the dock where the starbound Echo waited. Lila's drones had already secured the area, fending off remaining guards who attempted to stop them. The ship's ramp lowered, and the team rushed inside just as the last guard was taken down. Adrian hit the controls, lifting the ship off the ground as the fortress's alarms blared behind them. The artifact was safe, but the Syndicate would be hunting them relentlessly now. "We did it," Calixa said softly, holding the artifact close to her chest. "But the fight is far from over." Adrian smiled grimly. "Let's finish this." The starbound Echo soared through the dark expanse of space, its sleek silhouette cutting through the cosmos. Inside the ship, the crew gathered in the ship's briefing room, each face reflecting the gravity of their recent success and the challenges ahead. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the flickering holomap of the galaxy displayed before them. "We've got the artifact," he began, his voice steady. "But the Syndicate isn't going to let this go without a fight." Calixa sat quietly beside him, the artifact cradled in her hands. The crystal glowed softly, its light flickering gently as though in response to the tension in the room. Her expression was calm, but her mind was sharp, constantly working through strategies and possibilities. "We're dealing with more than a simple retrieval mission now," Adrian continued. "The Korthus Syndicate will hunt us to the edge of the galaxy to reclaim what we've taken." Mira crossed her arms, her tail twitching slightly. "And we got very little time to rest. They'll be mobilizing their forces. We'll need to move quickly." Leela nodded in agreement, her fingers flying over a datapad as she analyzed the latest intelligence. "I've been digging into their network. They've already traced our movements. It's only a matter of time before they catch up." Varn leaned against the wall, his arms crossed over his chest. "We've faced worse odds," he said, his voice rough but reassuring. "If we stay smart, we'll make it." Adrian's eyes moved to Calixa, who had been quiet throughout the conversation. "What do you think?" Calix's gaze lifted to meet his. "We've kept the artifact hidden from the Syndicate once. We can do it again. But we must keep moving, shifting locations, outsmarting their hunters." "And if they get close?" Mira asked. Calix's lips pressed into a thin line. "We fight, but only when necessary. Avoiding unnecessary conflict is as important as retrieving the artifact." Adrian leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "So, what's the next move? Where do we go from here?" Leela spoke up, her voice sharp and confident. "I've pinpointed a secure location, a hidden enclave where we can lay low while we plan our next steps. It's neutral territory, not controlled by the Syndicate." "It's as good a place as any," Adrian agreed. "We'll head there. From there, we can map out our next moves." The crew fell silent as they prepared for departure. The starbound Echo re-entered hyperspace, its journey quiet except for the hum of engines and the soft conversations of the crew. Calyx had held the artifact close, her fingers lightly tracing its surface as if drawing strength from its ancient energy. Hours later, the ship emerged from hyperspace near a hidden system, an isolated cluster of asteroids and small moons. The enclave Leela had identified lay within the largest of these moons, a place hidden beneath dense rock and guarded by neutral forces. As they docked safely within the enclave's secured hangar, Mira took point, scouting the surroundings while the others gathered inside. The enclave was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. Beings from various factions moved quietly about their business, with none asking questions or seeking trouble. "This place will keep us safe," Leela said, her fingers still working on the datapad. "At least for a while." Adrian took a seat near the viewport, gazing out at the quiet expanse of the enclave. "We've gained a small victory, but the real battle is just beginning. The Syndicate won't stop until they get the artifact back." Calyx's voice cut through the silence. "Then we will continue to outmaneuver them. They underestimate us, and that's their weakness." Varn nodded. "Exactly. We outlast them." Mira returned from her scouting mission, her expression unreadable. "No immediate threats, but they're watching. They know we're here." Adrian leaned forward, his voice steady. "Let's plan for the long haul. We won't be able to keep moving forever. Eventually, we'll need to confront them head-on." Calyx agreed. "We must find a way to neutralize their forces, permanently. Only then will the artifact be truly safe." Leela spoke next, her voice sharp and to the point. "Their resources are vast, and their reach extends beyond what we've seen. We'll need more than just the artifact to beat them." Adrian's brow furrowed in thought. "More allies, then. We gather those who share our goal, freedom from the Syndicate's grasp." Calyxa stood slowly, the artifact still held carefully in her hands. "And we prepare for the moment when we reclaim our place in the galaxy." The crew fell into discussion, laying out a series of plans, stealth missions, gathering intelligence, building alliances. Every step forward was a step closer to their final goal, defeating the Korthus Syndicate and securing the artifact. The air was filled with determination and quiet resolve. The path ahead was treacherous, but with each other's support and the strength of the artifact, they were ready to face whatever came next. The battle had only just begun. The starbound Echo drifted quietly through the depths of space, its engines humming at a low frequency as the crew rested within the enclave. Despite the safety it offered, there was an undeniable tension hanging in the air. Each crew member knew the clock was ticking. Soon, the Korthus Syndicate would regroup and resume their pursuit. Adrian sat in the dimly lit cockpit, his hands resting lightly on the controls as he stared out at the starry void. The artifact sat in a secure containment unit behind him, its glow providing a soft, eerie illumination to the room. Every so often, his eyes would flicker back toward it, a reminder of the heavy burden they carried. Calyxa entered the cockpit, her footsteps silent on the ship's deck. She settled into the co-pilot's seat, her gaze focused on the holographic displays showing the surrounding star systems. "They will come," she said softly. "The Syndicate won't abandon their pursuit." Adrian nodded grimly. "I know, but we'll be ready." Mira entered next, her tail flicking behind her as she scanned the ship's security systems. "They're gathering resources. I can feel it. Every faction connected to the Syndicate is mobilizing." "And the artifact?" Adrian asked, his voice steady. Calyxa responded, her voice calm and calculated. "It remains hidden for now, but their attempts to locate it are growing more intense." Leela joined them, her expression tense. "I've been working on ways to hide it further, but the Syndicate's technology has evolved. They'll adapt quickly if we're not careful." "We won't let them get close," Adrian said firmly. "Not while we're one step ahead." Varn appeared last, his bulk filling the doorway. We've survived worse. Let them try to find us. We'll be ready to strike back." The crew gathered around the table, each person adding their insights and suggestions to the plan. The Syndicate had always been a dangerous foe, brutal, calculating, and ruthless. But together, the crew of the starbound Echo had survived and thrived against similar odds. This mission, however, felt different. There was a deeper weight to it, a sense of finality. "Our next move," Adrian began, "is to disrupt their operations on a larger scale. If we can weaken their hold on the factions they control, we'll make it harder for them to track us." Calixa leaned forward slightly. "Disrupting their economy will force them to divert resources, which will slow them down. But we'll need more than just sabotage. We need allies." Mira nodded. "Agreed. We've seen how interconnected their operations are. Hitting them directly would be costly. Finding groups who've been wronged by the Syndicate will be key." Adrian tapped the table thoughtfully. "We've got connections scattered across the galaxy, from the outer rim to the core worlds. People who owe us favors, and those who despise the Syndicate as much as we do." Leela spoke up, her voice steady. "I've been digging into ancient Xarithan allies. They might hold the knowledge we need to protect the artifact from being traced, and perhaps even a weapon that can counter their advanced technology." Varn grinned, his teeth visible through his beard. "Let's start building that network. We don't have time to waste." The plan was set. Their mission would involve a series of coordinated strikes against Syndicate-controlled territories, alliances forged with disillusioned factions, and covert operations to keep the artifact safe. The Syndicate's reach was vast, but so was their need for control. Adrian knew that the key was exploiting their weaknesses. As the meeting wrapped up, Calix's presence grew more prominent. She wasn't just another member of the crew. Her ancient knowledge and abilities were essential to their survival. She offered guidance in areas where others faltered, her wisdom rooted in a history that predated the galaxy itself. "Stealth is our best weapon," Calixa said. "We move silently, and when the time is right, we strike decisively." Adrian stood, his expression resolute. "Then let's get to work. We've got a galaxy to protect." The crew returned to their respective stations, setting their course toward the first target in the Syndicate's web. The starbound Echo slipped into the shadows once again, a ghost among the stars. Every moment counted, every decision crucial. The battle had only just begun, and the fate of countless worlds rested on the success of this mission. The starbound Echo drifted through the quiet, uncharted reaches of space, its sleek hull blending into the vast emptiness. Inside the ship, the crew moved purposefully, their minds focused on the mission ahead. After months of covert operations, strikes against Syndicate-controlled territories, and forging alliances, the endgame was near. The artifact was safe, but the Korthus Syndicate was closing in. Adrian stood at the helm, watching the distant star systems pass by on the ship's main screen. The mission had taken them deep into enemy territory, where danger was a constant companion. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but his resolve was unshaken. Calixa leaned against the wall nearby, her expression calm and composed. The artifact rested securely in a hidden compartment of the ship, but she knew that its safety wouldn't guarantee victory. The Syndicate had resources beyond imagining. Tracking them was only part of the challenge. "We're nearing the target," Adrian said, breaking the silence. "Once we strike, they'll respond in force. Be ready." Leela approached, her hands moving quickly over her console. "Their defenses are more advanced than we anticipated. We'll need to keep our focus sharp." Mira, standing by the viewport, scanned the surrounding systems for any sign of Syndicate ships. "They're watching. Always watching." Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of concern beneath her words. Varn, seated at a heavy-duty tactical console, examined the tactical overlay of the target system. "They'd fortified this place. Even a shadow's presence will be felt." Calix's voice was measured. "We have allies, But even they can't fight an empire alone. This is our moment to tip the balance. Adrian nodded. Then let's not waste it. Prepare for the final assault. The crew split into their respective roles. Adrian commanded the ship from the cockpit, guiding them through the complex maze of defenses to reach their target, a hidden research facility deep within Syndicate-controlled territory. Lila worked on breaching security protocols, disabling locks, and monitoring the fortress's security feeds. Mira moved quietly through the corridors, coordinating with their allies who had infiltrated the base to gather intelligence. Varn stood ready, guarding the ship's perimeter, ensuring no threat slipped past unnoticed. Calixa concentrated deeply, her abilities reaching out to manipulate the minds of the Syndicate's operatives, subtle, yet effective in diverting attention away from their mission. Her power had grown in precision, allowing her to influence the enemy's movements with ease. "We're inside," Leela reported, her voice calm. "The artifact is being secured." Adrian's voice was steady. "Good. Keep them safe." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Syndicate had discovered their presence, and the countdown began. Forces flooded the facility, overwhelming the small group of allies and the infiltrators who had been gathered. Evacuation. Mira's voice cut through the comms as blaster fire erupted around her. "We've been compromised." Adrian's grip tightened on the controls. "Hold the line. We'll get you out." Varn moved quickly, deploying defenses to shield the ship from the oncoming attack. His heavy armor absorbed the blasts, shielding the ship from sustained fire. Calixa maintained her influence, keeping enemy forces disoriented as best she could. But the pressure was relentless. "Leela," Adrian called out, "we need that ship to fly now." "I'm working on it," Leela responded urgently. "Just a bit longer." As explosions echoed through the facility, the starbound Echo began to lift off. Mira and the remaining allies fought their way back to the ship, their efforts bolstered by Varn's steadfast defense. The ship emerged from the chaotic battlefield just as the enemy forces regrouped for another assault. Calixa collapsed into her seat, her breathing steady but strained from the exertion. She had pushed her abilities to their limit. "We're clear," Adrian confirmed, his voice filled with relief. "Jump to hyperspace." Now, the starbound Echo shot forward, leaving the Syndicate's research facility behind in a flash of light. The distant explosions faded into silence as they navigated through hyperspace, their escape secure, if only for the moment. Adrian took a deep breath, feeling the ship's engines steady beneath him. "We did it. The artifact is safe." "But not for long," Calixa said, her voice calm despite her exhaustion. "They'll be hunting us until the end of the galaxy." "We're ready for them," Mira added, her tone resolute. "Every strike we've made, every alliance we've formed, has brought us closer to defeating them." Leela's fingers moved steadily across her terminal. "And we'll keep moving forward. They'll never catch us again." Varn leaned back in his chair, a grin forming beneath his rough exterior. "Let them try. They'll learn that shadows can't be controlled." Adrian looked around at his crew, his family in this vast, dangerous universe. "Together, we'll ensure the galaxy remains free, one mission at a time." The starbound Echo continued its journey through the stars, leaving behind a legacy of resistance and determination. The Korthus Syndicate may never give up their hunt, but the crew of the starbound Echo would never stop fighting.